to Always Receiving Nur monthly teleconferences. Today we will be talking about Eid al-Adha, Eid of sacrifice, and maybe always be open to receiving the light of divine guidance, inshallah, and may this guidance enlighten our hearts and be a healing and mercy to all of us, inshallah. Everyone, to Always Receiving Nur monthly teleconferences. Today we will be talking about Eid al-Adha, Eid of sacrifice. Always be open to receiving the light of divine guidance, inshallah, and may this guidance enlighten our hearts and be a healing and mercy to all of us, inshallah. Everyone, to Always Receiving Nur monthly teleconferences.
Okay, so
today we will be talking about
Bismillah, so what's
Eid al-Adha, Eid of sacrifice.
Okay, so I think this is better. Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So we had an interesting start. Inshallah, may it be a blessed session together. As some of you may know me, this is Isra. I'm Isra, and I have here two distinguished friends, Sister Yamina and Sister Aliaa, and we thought we will make this conversation together, and with input from you as well. We would like to, inshallah, explore the Quranic passages, especially the key passages pertaining to this Eid, Abraham's attempt at sacrificing his son. We would like to explore the story together to find its beautiful and profound meanings, and inshallah lead up to Eid of sacrifice with some preparation and reflection together. So without further delay, let's pull out our Qur'ans, or if you're on the web, you can pull it up from islamicstudy.com/Quran search, or any other site that you might have. The surah that we're going to be looking at is Surah 37, which is Surah as-Saffaat, chapter 37, and we'll be looking at the passage starting from 98, verse 98, up till verse 111. So just to give a bit of a context, this chapter 37, Surah Saffaat, follows Surah Yasin. And the main themes of the surah are Tawheed and life after death. The surah mentions those who deny resurrection and life after death and who reject the messengers, except illa ibadallahi al-mukhlasin, except those who has been granted ikhlas, sincerity. It mentions messengers like Noah, Abraham, Moses, Aaron, and each time when they're described, they are put forth as examples of muhsinin and mu'minin, those who are muhsin and who are believers. In this passage that we're zooming into, verses in 98 and 111, this passage immediately preceded by a brief mention of how Ibrahim alayhi salam, peace be upon him, challenged idol worship among his people. So his people are really angry at him that he's questioning the belief in idols, and they decide to throw him into blazing fire. And the Quran alludes to his being saved from the fire, and then his migration for God, his hijrah for God, and again in the beautiful, very succinct style of the Quran. And then this passage that we will be reading comes into picture. So what I will do is I will read this passage, and I want to then open conversation between us and with you, the audience. So the translation goes like this: They wanted to harm him, but we humiliated them. He, meaning Abraham, said, I will go to my sustainer. He is sure to guide me. My sustainer, grant me a righteous son. So we gave him the good news that he would have a patient son. When the boy was old enough to work with his father, Abraham said, My son, I had seen myself sacrificing you in a dream. What do you think? He said, Father, do as you are commanded, and God willing, you will find me steadfast. When they both submitted to God and he had laid his son down on the side of his face, we called out to him, Abraham, you have fulfilled the dream. This is how we reward those who do good. It was a test to prove. We ransomed his son with a momentous sacrifice. In Arabic, وَفَدَيْنَاهُ بِذِبْحٍ عَظِيمٍ. And we let him be praised by succeeding generations. Peace be upon Abraham. This is how we reward those who do good, muhsinin, literally. Truly, he was one of our faithful servants. Now, this will be the key passage for today, and I would like to invite you to share with us what you find striking in this passage. Those of us who just joined, and now we're looking at Surah 37, verses 98 to 111. So, what do you find striking in this passage? Anything that jumps at you here? Actually, before we do that, maybe we should take a moment to reflect on this is a Quranic passage that we're about to encounter together. What is the purpose of the Quran? As we approach to the passage, what kind of attitude should we have? What are we expecting here? Sister Aliaa or Sister Yamina, would you like to jump in?
I was thinking about this when you were speaking from the beginning, listening to the story. And I think part of me listening to the story, there is a storytelling part that I want to listen to and just analyze the story. And then, and that was my first impression. As a story, I have things that stop me, as a story.
Okay, let's maybe go into that, Sister Aliaa. What is it in the story? Let's maybe talk more specifically about this passage, and then we can come back to the question of what is the purpose of this passage? What is it? What does the Quran inviting us to in general, and specifically in here? So, is there anybody from the audience who wants to share? When you look at this passage,
as a story,
what is striking, interesting, or anything that you want to note about this passage we just read?
For me, I look at it as a play. As you were reading it, I could see, because you're reading it so beautifully, mashallah, and you're taking your time with verses. I just saw someone, speaking to his son, and then as a story, without a context, I would see a son that looks like a good son, the way he interacts with his father. Yet the father, is bringing onto his son, bringing what I would call dhulm, something injustice, something unfair. The father, I would say, even I would use the word aggressive, the father being aggressive for no reason.
Aggressive, yeah.
I was just thinking, if I look at this story, someone wanting to kill his son, and then saying
because
that it's
he had a dream, right?
Yeah. And then it took me a step further, because then I was thinking, okay, so if the father is saying, this, it's not from me, I want to kill you, I was almost ordered to kill you. So then it's from a dream, but the father is implicating that this dream is from God. So then it means that God wants me to kill you. So then again, if I'm someone looking at a story, I will question, what kind of God would want to kill someone who did do nothing? Because that boy looks like a very nice boy. The way he's answering his father, it looks like he's a nice boy. So I would question, why would a God want to kill a human being, you know, for no reason. He looked like even a good human being. He was like very kind to his father. And then if he would want to kill human being, why would he get his father to kill? So it will also make me question God, like that God who's ordering a father to kill his son. Like, you know, it's not that he wants the son dead, but he wants the father to kill his son. So just looking from my point of view, I felt so disturbed. Like, you know, it just, you know, it was totally disturbing to me. At least that was my perspective from a story point of view.
Maybe if we just one second, Sister Esma. Sister Yamina had started talking before you, so after that the mic will come to you, okay?
I thought when Aliaa was sharing with us, so I started looking at the text again, and I thought maybe for all of us to go back to the text and reflect on it again with this in mind, maybe may help us and give us some clues in both ways, in questioning and maybe some signs for answering as well. So here, when it starts and saying they wanted to harm him, but God humiliated them, the people of Abraham wanted to harm him. Why? Because he had confronted them and he destroyed their idols, and he confronted them about the uselessness of their idols. And then Abraham said, I will go to my Lord. Inni dhahibun ila Rabbi sayahdin. I am going to my Rabb, to my sustainer. He will definitely guide me. And then he asks God for a salih, for a righteous son. Rabbi habli min as-salihin. And God does answer his prayer. And it says, so we gave him the good news that he would have a غلام halim, a halim son. Halim is more than patient, is someone who is
tender, maybe?
gentle.
Gently.
He gave him the good news of a very gentle son. And now that the son, it says, when the boy was old enough to work with his father, so just when he's old enough so that he can see he can reap the fruit of having this son, like he's going to benefit him. Right then, he has this dream, and Abraham says, "Oh my son, I've seen myself sacrificing you in a dream. What do you think?" So he doesn't just decide on his own, interestingly. And he says, the son says, Father, do as you are commanded, and God willing, you will find me steadfast. Here is sabirin. Inshallah, satajiduni inshallah min as-sabirin. You will find me among the patient ones. And when they both submitted, they surrendered to God, he had laid his son down on the side of his face. God called out to him, Ibrahim, you have confirmed the dream. قد صدقت الرؤيا. And even it's not a dream, it's remember ru'ya, vision in Surah Yusuf. Dream used for dreams that don't have meanings. It's a ru'ya, it's a vision. We don't know if he saw it when he was sleeping or not.
But just that, Sister Yamina, just as a side note, not that this was really changed what you said, but it says in Irani film المنام.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it says in sleep, but yeah.
Ru'ya is always used when there is a message. It's meaningful. It's from God.
Oh yes, not ahlam. Yeah.
And then it says قد صدقت الرؤيا. You did confirm the vision. إن كذلك نجزي المحسنين. This is how we reward the muhsinin, those who live in ihsan, with ihsan. إن هذا لهو البلاء المبين وفديناه بربح عظيم. And then it says we ransomed his son with a momentous sacrifice, and we let him be praised by succeeding generations. Peace. And then after all this, which as Aliaa said, from one aspect, it looks like something horrible is going on.
Or shocking, at least, yeah.
And just when he is old enough to be your friend and work with you, and now you have this dream, and it says Salamun ala Ibrahim. What salam is this? Like where is peace here? Again, it says this is how we reward those who the muhsinin, truly of our faithful believing ibad, worshippers. Subhanallah. So I just wanted to emphasize like the context where this is coming. This is coming from Ibrahim taking a stand against his people, against their worshipping idols. Then he is asking for the son, and just when the son is grown up and he's going to enjoy his son, and this son is so gentle and such a beautiful person, and you have this dream.
So this was the helpful situating the moment, the frightening or shocking moment for us, because it is a creator, it's a sustainer who saves him from people who wants to harm him. He grants his wishes for a righteous son, and so it does give us some clues as to what to do with this dream. And Sister Asma, you had something to say?
No, I just wanted to make a very quick comment on Dr. Alia's comment. I think it's the same story with Yusuf alayhi salam, that I'm sure Ismail alayhi salam, he knew that his father was a prophet, and that was not an ordinary average people. These were both of them are prophets. At that time, Ismail alayhi salam was very young, and he, but not that young that he could understand that his father was a prophet, and it was not just an ordinary dream or a whim or a thing like that. So I thought that was understanding, and if you think from that point of view, it doesn't seem very dramatic or So that I just wanted to that was my understanding, that this was not just an ordinary ruya of some average person. This was of a prophet's ruya vision. And so I knew about it. That was the most important thing. So
So does anybody else wants to share anything about this passage we read?
Yes, now I feel, just if I'm not thinking of it as Quran, but I'm trying to believe the passage, I feel the problem is more like, I really worry about the kind of God and the kind of father that we're dealing with.
The other thing, there was more generation gap between the father and the son,
Yeah, and there is definitely, this is definitely a very provocative passage when we look at it, and the most helpful thing for me is to bring this back within the bigger context of the Quran. This passage is part of a discourse that is sent by our sustainer, that is meant to guide us, and guide us for what? Not how to fix walls or carpentry. This is not just to give us ideas, recipes about just anything. It's directed exclusively to connect us to transcendence, to our Creator. There's some background sounds, so if you are not speaking, if you could mute, just please make sure your microphones are muted if you're not speaking. Or Sister Ali, if you can do as needed. So, so the Quran's essential message is to show us how the world we live in is actually revealing our Creator. So the world is finite, the world is changing, impermanent. but it is constantly talking to us about the permanent one, the transcendent one. The universe is filled with signs of God, and the things all around us is indicating His presence and glorifying Him. So, there's a background sound.
Not muted. Maybe if you could mute it. Who is Sidi and Nadra? Thank you. Aliaa, could you please mute them?
Okay. Sister Aliaa, are you there? Could you please mute? There are some sounds.
Yes, is there a noise?
Yes, could you please mute? There is a participant. There are two unmuted participants. If you could mute them. If you scroll down in your participant list, you will see. Okay, so so when we look at this passage as part of this discourse that is meant to connect us to our Creator and to enable us to see the signs of God around us, the signs that indicate His presence and glorify Him. If the Quran is all about this, all about explaining the meaning of our existence and showing how this world we live in completely is filled with signs pointing to our Creator, then with that understanding, if we come back to this text, we can find very profound lessons here. So given these purposes, what could be the guidance in this story? That here's a person, Abraham, who really confronts idols and says no to worshipping things that are not the real source of power and beauty, that the things people had idolized, thinking that this is it, this is the source of beauty, this is source of power. Abraham, peace be upon him, was able to see through them and say, no, these are not source of power. These are just means through which Allah is sending us blessings. There's only one Creator. These cannot be creators or sources. There's only one source. Everything else is a means through which we get to know the source. So what after somebody who has confronted these idols is now presented with this interesting situation where he feels he's called to sacrifice his son, slaughter his son for the sake of God. What could be, going beyond this initial shock and coming back to our bearings, this is a text that's meant for our guidance, to connect us to our Creator, to see His signs. Then what could be the meaning of the story? Could anybody, I'm turning to first to Sister Yamina and Sister Aliaa, but also, dear audience, you're welcome to jump in as well. What do you think could be guidance here?
You know what, as you're talking, I was not thinking about the answer, but I was thinking about like my math teacher in elementary school. I had some good math teachers at the time, and they would, like, when we do a mistake, they would say, you know what, I'm gonna give you some guidance, like, you use like this path in analyzing or in, like, the situation or the mas'ala, the problem, and this is not the path that you should go. Consider a different way of dealing with it and you will find the answer. So when she would say that, we will go back and reread the problem and then stop thinking about the way that we were analyzing it and start thinking about another way. And she would never tell us the answer. She would keep guiding us to, like, you say, oh, you went off track, go back again, focus, you're using a different way. So I think you gave us some clues when you're saying, like, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this whole Quran is to tell us about him, is to tell us about people who have a good relationship with him. It's about, and this is what we're supposed to see. And I think if we look at it that way, like, if that's the mindset, then I'm gonna find something, like, you know. So I guess giving me the mindset, and I believed in my teacher. Like, I believed when my teacher said this is not the right way to solve this problem, so I would look into another way of looking at it. And if I believe, like, the Quran is there for people who are looking into it for guidance, like, if you believe, if you're looking in it for guidance, then you then will be looking for guidance. Then you then will say, it doesn't make sense. Like, yes, on the surface, it looks like there's a creator who is, like, you know, who's like, you know, having dhulm on his worshippers, and there's a father who's, like, you know, who's aggressor towards his son. But no, this cannot be, because this is not the path. So, and I guess like this key that gave us is the most important key. So I'll leave other people to open the door with that key, inshallah.
Into my mind is two. One is the guidance, opening up the guidance as we do in our Quranic study, the weekly Quranic study, is always remember that the Quran describes the kind of guidance it offers us, and one of it is healing and light. It brings light, something that was dark, we didn't know its meaning, and suddenly it starts making sense and it looks beautiful, and we know what it is for, and it is always related to eternity and the life after death, because impermanence is very painful to the human ruh. And so there is that healing and light, and that's what the guidance is about, and meaning and purpose and wisdom. And the second one is, of course, always go back to the context, which is here. If you go just back to 95, ayah 95, it's relating to us how Ibrahim alayhi salam is relating to his people, and we find him saying, he asked his people, do you worship something that you yourself have carved? So he's in this relationship with the people, so we know there is something here about idols and idol making, and this idol making is something that we make up ourselves, something that we carve ourselves. And when Ali was talking, it reminded me that when we are interacting with the ayat in the Quran, and the ayat in the Quran here are taking us back to something like, where is the hidayah here? Where is the light? Where is the healing? And in this apparently awful situation, a loving father who prayed to help his son, he is very happy with his son. This son is very gentle. He just grew up. It's just like when you're going to even enjoy him even more. And he wanted like a salih, and he had this child, and now he has this dream to sacrifice his son, and the son is willing, and it's passive aggressive, like there is, because there is surrender. It says in note 3, ayah 1. So both of them must surrender to all this, and you say, where is the goodness and light and the beauty here? And this is exactly how we feel in our real life. In our life, things happen when it seems sometimes unbearable, whether in our personal life or we see it in the world. There are wars going on, people being tortured, people dying in unfair and unjust way, and all this injustice and things. And sometimes we just overwhelmed and we don't see. We cannot see where the beauty is. And it's exactly as we are grappling here with the ayat of the Quran, we grapple with our life in our life as well. And so the ayah doesn't tell us just the solution, just like Alia's teacher. There will be no point. I mean, if you teach maths and physics, especially physics, you have to understand how things are going on. If you show some examples to the students, most of the students think, oh, okay, I got it. And then you tell them, okay, you give a problem to solve, and you see lots of them looking at each other, how was it? And they start asking questions. They start realizing that actually they didn't get it. It's only when they solve it themselves that they understand what's going on, that they can ask the right questions. And so I feel this text from the Quran is the rahmah, the tarbiyah, Allah being a Rabb. The rububiyyah is reflected in the way the text relates the events to us. It doesn't tell us the conclusion, but at the same time, it's giving us every word is filled with clues to those who have the intention to read it as an indication, an ayah, a sign to find that guidance in our daily life when we are in situations like this, and we find ourselves in situations like this in our life.
And that's exactly what, and that's also as you were talking, I felt like the very amazing thing here is that we are put in front of us as a human being, Abraham alayhi salam, who definitely loved his child, his son, and he's human being, full human being like everybody else. And what is so amazing about him, according to the passage, is that willingness. Like, he has that moment of doubt. Like, what do you think? He doesn't think, oh, that's cool, no problem. No, like, it must have shocked him, and he's sharing this with his son almost as a way of like, this is what I think God is telling me, but what do you think? Do you think, is this God? What is God telling you? So he's not saying God told me. He says, I'm seeing in my dream that I'm slaughtering you. What do you think? So what do you think, meaning, shall I go ahead with it? But at the same time, what do you think? Do you think this is what God wants for you? He's not absolutely sure. And he completely, I mean, what more touching than the situation where you love this child, you prayed for this child, and here's the child, and now you feel that there's a strong indication that this child, your Lord, your Creator, wants this child to be slaughtered. And in that moment, what is most amazing and what is exemplary as a prophet for us is that he is willing to surrender, and he's saying, and the son too, as a prophet, he is also a prophet. What is it, Ishmael or Isaac? He is a prophet as well. And at this point, he's also an exemplary. He's like, Dad, go ahead. If this is what God wants, go ahead with it. Don't worry. Just go ahead. And in both of them, there's a sense that they know who they are talking about. They aren't talking about some random God. They're talking about a creator that they have believed on the basis of strong evidence, and they have a connection to, and they have the strong understanding and conviction, and not a blind faith. It's a well-based conviction that God is never against us. So even if my Creator is asking me to slaughter my son, he's not against me. Or even if God wants me to be slaughtered by my own dad, he's not against me. God is never against me. It is impossible for my Rabb to be against me and to ignore my needs, my yearnings. And then that clarity is the breakthrough. And that is what we also desperately need in our everyday lives, because we constantly forget. As Sister Yamina was saying, we think as if there's this God who's against us. I want a good life, but he doesn't want to give me a good life. I want things to last, but he constantly makes me attached to them and takes them away. Like, as if we have this this kind of confrontation. Sometimes, I mean, sometimes a part of us is saying this kind of stuff or acting as if that's the case. And that's this story by is kind of confronting us there, like, really? Can your sustainer be against you? How can it be? It can't be. He's your sustainer. He can never be against you because he's the one who brought me into existence. He is the one who sustains and nurtures me every day, every moment.
He's the one who gave me that desire for goodness, that love for my son, that
love for life, like love for health, love for justice, right?
Desire for being with that beloved, gentle son all the time, that not wanting to be separated from your beloved. All those, if he's our Rabb, he creates us with all those wants and needs and desires, and he's the one who fulfills the needs. Actually, that wanting, that need, that yearning for your son to be well, to be always with your beloved, including beloveds, including your children, including Ibrahim alayhi salam with his son. They are all from his Rabb. And the muhsin is the one who is aware that they are from his Rabb. And therefore they are ayat. So this invitation is coming to us again. They are muhsin, they are mu'min. So we stop and say, what's going on here? Like, isn't he? Yes, he is. But he is aware, he had that awareness of that whatever is going on is an activity of rububiyyah. So those Rabbani ayat, those yearnings in me are the ayat. Tell me about my Rabb. I know he wants me to be with my son because he gave me that wahi. I know he loves my son because he gave me the love for him. I know he protects him, take care of him because he gave me the need to protect him and to want him to be protected and cared for. So I don't use those given ayat, those given longings and yearnings and desires and needs against my Rabb, but to know my Rabb. Actually, that's how I know him. That's how they know. You said they have, they believe in him, they have a connection with him, a relationship with him on confirmed through evidences, to ayat, not only claim. And those ayat are in us, part of them are those yearning. And so I know that my Rabb cares for me. Give me the one. I wouldn't know that I need care if he not meet my desire. And when I become aware of this, instead of, that's where Tawheed, in the inner Tawheed occurring. Because when we are not in that state of Tawheed, part of me is not surrendering because it's confronting God and saying, like, not seeing him as a Rabb and saying, how can you do this to me? Like, I love my son, how can you come to him? Astaghfirullah, subhanallah. So actually, if I love my son, it means my Rabb loves him and he wants me to take care of him. He made me love him. Where did I get that relationship and connection with my son and other people? And how can I even love them? Something that I have a say about, and that's how I get to know my Rabb. It's really, that point that you said, like, he can never be against us because, and we know, and we can be sure, we have that yaqeen, if we are muhsin, if we have that awareness of the
And Ibrahim alayhi salam had this awareness because the Quran talks about how, as a young person, he had this surge and he looked at the world around him and he meditated, and he was brought into guidance through seeing the signs of God around him. And then once you have that, then it's not really rational in any sense of the word, intellectual or emotional, to come back and say, oh, God is against. How can he be against you? He's the one, as you said, who gave you that love for your child. How can he be against your child or you? Or I mean, Alan, we can expand the metaphor, expand this. It's not only he gave me my yearnings, my needs, my wishes, but also he's the one, most physical sense. I love my son, let's say, the creator is the one who took in all its detail, from the moment in his mother's womb, when he comes out, from his eyelashes to his lungs and his brain to his fingers, and every moment is feeding him. This is his creator. I say the one who is, how can he be against God? So the choice here is that these things are happening, so maybe it's no. The choice that we face here is whether we choose to remember that there is only one source of beauty and power, and that's our sustainer, versus forgetting that and pretending as if my needs, my yearnings, my existence, my eyelashes and my lung fluids and my fingers and the world I live in, the universe I live in, is separate from him. To imagine this versus to be awake.
I read it.
What did you say?
Yes, disappears.
I couldn't hear you, Sister Yamina. Could you say that again?
I like adding my breathing, because without the breathing.
Yeah, I know. The lungs and the eyelashes, they don't, they won't take us far. Yeah, breathing too.
As mashallah, I'm always like playing the other guy, because when I look at the story, that I know, I as a human being know that God is the one who created me and created my son and created my breathing. But when the difficulty comes in, I'm taken over by the difficulty. It becomes more and more difficult to remember this, because it becomes a piece of information that I am trying to remember. And I guess Surah Al-Baqarah, the end of Surah Al-Baqarah, and God says, God does not challenge any soul with more than it can take. That people, the more they are connected to God, the more they have this relationship, the more they see things clearly. Like for me, this clarity is the same clarity as the clarity of his wife, like Prophet Ibrahim's wife, when she said, you're leaving us here, and it doesn't seem as bad as killing someone, but in reality, it is as bad as killing someone. Leaving two people in the middle of the desert, there's no one around them, and saying, I was ordered. And as soon as he says that, she has the same relationship with her Lord. She says, then my Lord would not, let us go, very clearly. And interestingly, the son has that. So he is looking to the son and saying, almost wanting the son's wisdom as well. With the question, the son says, you will find me helpful. You will find me but it's a relationship. I guess they were able to respond that way because of the relationship that they have practiced and built day in and day out. It wasn't the knowledge. And I guess what I'm wanting to learn and internalize is how to change this information that God is my creator of my breath in and breath out, into this knowledge, into trust. And from that into trust is a relationship that needs to be worked on. So I guess we need you to help us to see, okay, how do the verses guide us to building that relationship?
We do.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Can I go ahead? Yeah. We're talking about perfect situations in here. We're talking about two prophets, a perfect child. We're talking, I'm not trying to refute what you're saying. But what I don't understand is that it always seems like we're talking about the ideal situation, the perfect situation. We're talking about two prophets in here, peace be upon them. We're talking about Prophet Abraham that had communicated with God and so on. But in the report or in this type of explanation, I would love to hear about, talks about the situation of imperfect human beings. We are imperfect, yes. But how about the daily struggles of a child with illness or, compared to another child? Again, I understand what you're saying and I'm not refuting it. I am having a hard time, having that stay in my heart 24/7. When you are constantly, day in and day out, right there in front of your eyes, you're struggling, you're in anguish, you're in pain, because your child is not up to a certain level of functional performance or whatever it may be. How can I look at my child and say my child has gotten the same fair treatment as everybody else's child? If my child, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is sacrificing my child in this way, or looking at me as, okay, Abraham, alayhi salam was told, slaughter your son. So what am I being told in here? Watch your children being slaughtered, figuratively day in and day out, and just stand in there and just say, this is not going to hurt. It's not supposed to hurt. It's okay. It's going to be okay. All I want is one thing, and that is for Allah to give me just one sign that says that one day they dig that hole and they're going to bury you. Your children are going to be taken care of. I'm not going to be on this earth forever for them. Right now they need me so badly. But when I'm gone, what's going to happen? Can they just have one sign that says, or one reassurance? I'm not Prophet Abraham. God is not going to talk to me. So please, let's just stop talking about perfect, ideal situation and go back to reality.
Sister Huda,
please.
Sister Huda, thank you for sharing your heart. And what makes it most beneficial for all of us is to really bring it to our everyday life. And that's exactly what, Sister Aliaa was saying, that we can say hypothetically that yes, God is never against us. But when we are in actual situations in everyday life, how are we going to actually lead this out day in and day out, instead of just letting it stay as a dusted intellectual principle? So definitely, thank you for sharing your situation, that you're going through a particular difficult situation, something involving your child. And you're in pain about it, and that's I mean, we are with you in that. I mean, everybody has their own sadnesses, and yours is also very sad. Even for me, like, I haven't seen your child, and it makes me sad just from hearing briefly from you. So so definitely the message here is not about saying, don't feel anything, just be numb. And what makes this passage helpful for us is to see that here is another human being who's going through one of the most horrible situations, to be told, or he thinks he's told, there are different interpretations actually, he's told that he needs to kill his child. I mean, there's one thing to lose your child and then try to make sense of it, that's also very hard, but then to be asked to do it with your own hands, and that's another added layer of, like, horror there almost, it's painful. So here's another human being going through a very painful situation, and what is it that enables him to surrender, and what is he surrendering to? And that's the key question that we are trying to explore here. What is he actually surrendering to. He's not surrendering to the idea that this is, you know, God can give me pain whenever he wants. He's God and I have to shut up. This is not the type of God that's being told here. This is the, you know, as Sister Yamina was saying, the feeling that profound sadness and care for the child. Like, I want the well-being of this child. I want this child to survive. I want him to be taken care of even after I'm gone. Right now, I'm dedicating much of my life to this child, but what happens when I'm gone? And I'm worried. Now, what do we do in this stage? And that's the level where science come in. That what will assure me that the creator of this child cares about this child? What is the sign for it? Would anyone want to kind of chime in here?
Yeah, can I just say?
Yeah, actually, I would like to chime in. Isra, can I?
Okay, Andre, you haven't spoken so far, so please go ahead, and then we can hear other people too.
Thank you, Una, for sharing. I just want to say, I mean, these are prophets, of course. So they're also human beings. I don't really think it's talking about perfect human beings when it talks about prophet, because as soon as they too had surrendered, which means they were in a state of not surrendering, I mean, that's a state in which I am every day. So it's the state of not surrendering. You know what I mean? I really think this story is talking about these two have exactly the same problems that you have and that I have and that we all have. Today I was talking with my mother about the story as the story, and it's really the question how ready they are to submit, and how ready they are to submit to exactly expecting the best from God. And while I was telling her the story, I thought, oh, I'm not yet there, so I was looking forward to the night. So I really think it talks exactly about that. You know, that situation that you are in and that everyone is in.
May I say something? Assalamu alaikum. About this whole story with the Prophet Ibrahim and the sacrifice. Prophet Ibrahim went through many, many trials and tribulations. If he traced his life, from the very beginning, he was in trouble, always in trouble. And his way out of that trouble was his surrender to Allah's wish. And if we remember the story of Nimrod, where he was thrown into the fire, and even when Jibreel alayhi salam asked him, shall I help you? And he said, no, I depend upon Allah, because Allah knows what Allah is doing. So in this way, the fire was cooled. So Huda, you are in the fire. You watch your son, daughter in this difficulty. And as the mother, I feel very much for you, and my heart aches. But I feel like if you surrender, you will see the beauty in that child, the beauty of that situation. And if you just surrender it, God, Allah is merciful, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. So in this way, that is what it was. The Prophet Ibrahim was asked to, take his son that he asked for Allah for many, many years, to put him into the desert, leave him alone there. How can a father leave his baby there? So this way, I feel that no one have to surrender. That's the main thing.
And the sign is already. Thank you very much for sharing that. Also, Sister Rashid and Andrea too. So the sign is already in that yearning, as Sister Yamina mentioned earlier, that in that pain, like Sister Amr, Haja Amr, she doesn't know the mother or the child probably, but her heart goes out to her and her child. Similarly, I think all of us in this room feels concern and sadness, and including the mother herself. So all of this, like, who's moving us so much about a being other than ourselves? And who's putting this so much concern into our hearts and so much love into our hearts? And that's our sign, because we didn't create this feeling. If we created this feeling, we could turn it off. We could just say, you know what, I don't want to care about this child anymore. We can't do that. We can't. So, I mean, yes, we do have perceptions that are connected to our emotions, so that we have choices over perception. For instance, if I think that just because my child did not start speaking at a certain age, that she's lesser than other children, that will even pain me more. So I can change some of my perceptions, and that will reflect in some of, my emotions changing as well. At the end of the day, though, I do not control my emotions. That why do I care so much about this other being that just came out of my body? I don't even know how it came out. Plus, I care so much about it. And I care so much that I'm concerned about what will happen to this child after I'm gone. So that very situation that seems to be our, curse, is actually, that is not a curse, and that in itself is a sign that somebody cares deeply about this child. Because you, despite yourself, care about this child. And all of us, and any sane person who didn't destroy her inner fitra, inner nature, whoever sees the situation or hears about the situation feels a concern. That in itself is a sign that somebody behind the scenes who makes our heart beat and who makes our hearts move cares about this child.
Isra, can I share a story of one of our sisters?
Sure.
One of our sisters here has a child who has born with a lot of very special needs, and her father is a neurosurgeon and the mother is a pediatrician, and both professors in the university, and both were very for some reason very challenged with their child. And the mother, for a long time, because she had two other children who were very with what people call intelligent, what people call normal, what people call meeting expected functionalities, what people call and with her and her husband even being more aware of the child's situation, mother felt all through that this child is not meeting everyone's expectation. This child is not meeting what the school is. This child can never be like her brother or sister. This child cannot be like everyone else. And she kept paining herself until the child, mashallah, like a few years ago, was 16 years old. And then at that age, the child got a kidney disease that is part of a general systemic disease that was like, the child she was very close to losing the child. And then she said, for the first time, I really understood that this child has always been a blessing, and that my life without this child is never going to be the same. And that this child, regardless on whether she meets or does not meet anyone's expectation, this child is my mercy, is my heaven, is my Jannah, and I cannot do without her. So it all dawned on me when I was about to lose my child, that all the days that I was wondering why her, I realized that no, she is the way she is exactly the way she is. She said even through her sickness, the child was never complaining. She was the one who would hold her mother's hand and say, "Mom, are you sad? Are you sad, mommy? Why are you sad?" She said, so here she is close to death, and she's holding my hand and saying, "Are you sad, mommy?" The passion and the love that this child showed me in her worst moments were my best teacher about what is the mercy in all of this. So she said, like, all of a sudden realized all of that mercy. I guess from the Prophet's story, what I always think that Prophet Ibrahim and his family had an advantage for that. I personally don't have that advantage. That you with me all the time is that that God says that we have given them this special gift, that they are a continuous remembrance of where is home, what is forever, where is eternity. So they, in my head, if we could actually see this life as transient, then we realize whatever we're having in this life is just a way to heaven. And when we don't see it as transient, then everyone else's opinion about us becomes painful. But if we see it as transient, and every challenge, then we start enjoying things that we wouldn't have enjoyed, that we pass by without enjoying. And then our eyes being on the other side helps us enjoy it even more, because we know that that's actually where we're going to sit down and enjoy it. Wallahu a'lam.
Can I make a point?
Yes, please.
Yes. Basically, the way I look at the story is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I think there is an unparalleled example in the history of the whole world that he tested Ibrahim alayhi salam, his son, his wife, the whole family, because he wanted to honor him. I mean, nobody is honored more than, Ibrahim alayhi salam and the Prophet alayhi salam. In the Quran, there are only 2 prophets for which Asma from Husna is used, and that is only Ibrahim alayhi salam and Prophet Muhammad alayhi salam. So my point is that he was, and also the Quran mentions that he was a nation in himself. So obviously Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to test him. And it was a test for Ismail alayhi salam as well, being a righteous son, for which Ibrahim alayhi salam himself prayed. So that was his test. And then, Ibrahim alayhi salam did so much reasoning and rationalizing to Namrud, saying that, Allah is the one who creates and who takes life and gives, life and death and all that. That was radical tawheed, absolute tawheed. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was definitely going to test him. And he has never tested anybody, and that's why he has got a very high maqam, I think.
And thank you.
When they are tested, their maqam goes up. So it's not because of their sin. So that's a very high maqam because
Sister, thank you, Sister Esma. And just wanted to highlight something that Sister Esma mentioned, and that's the idea of test. And what I used to think before, Receiving Nur and other halakas, I used to think test is just, the test that, as a student, I thought, my professor wants to know whether I know the subject or not, so he gives me a test. So it's only for the purposes of determining my level, okay? But then here the test is actually much more deeper than that, and it's actually different, because it's not just God is saying, oh, let me test you. How far can you go? How far can you trust me? It's more like it's a test that's helping us to grow. Like, why would somebody's degree go up when that person is tested? It's not simply like, I got a good mark in my exam. No, it's more like through that challenge, venues for growth has opened to me, opportunities of growth open to me. And that's precisely the question is, what is the growth that Abraham is going through? And which this is an important question, not about Abraham, it's about us, because we are Abraham, we are Ishmael. We are in these situations where we feel we are pushed beyond our limits of patience, limits of understanding. I mean, if Abraham was asked to give his house or this and that, I think it would be not a big deal, but he's asked to give his son and then slaughter him. Like, not just we're gonna take him and he's gonna be, no, you will slaughter him with your own hands. At least this is how we perceived it. There are actually some interesting interpretations by some scholars that say that actually he wasn't quite commanded to kill the son, literally, but what he perceives is like, this is what I like. So how is this hard wrenching situation helping his growth? What is going on in here? And for that, maybe I want to invite Sister Yamina to comment here. What is this about, really? Like, why what happens to Abraham, alayhi salam, when he goes through this? I mean, he looks the same person from outside. One can't tell anything. He has the same face and hands before and after. He didn't even get to slaughter the son, which is great. You know, the son doesn't die. Nothing happens to him. So so why was this whole heart-wrenching situation? What is it helping? How is it helping his growth? And this is not about him again, it's about us. So if we figure that out, we can also bring it to ourselves. So Sister Yamina, would you like to share with us here?
One point that attracted my attention in one of the sisters' comments is surrender. And I think one of the great lessons we're learning from this text, from this story of Sayyidina Ibrahim, is the power, the healing power, the light of surrender. And this surrender is something that any one of us can do anytime. Actually, it's not something that we actively do. It's something that when I stop resisting, when I stop complaining, when I stop not accepting what's going on around me, when I just say, just a second, you don't know everything. It could be that I'm missing the main point. When I have that moment where I accept my weakness, I accept my limitedness, I accept my vulnerability, and I see it and accept it and surrender to that reality and stop for a while and wait. If I can just wait a little to be patient, miracles will happen there. That's where the miracles happen, is when Ibrahim and his son, both of them Islama, they both surrendered. So here it seems like there is an ideal situation because they are prophets, but I believe that rather than an ideal situation where we've been taught here is the possibility of human surrender, that it is possible, that it is always within our reach, that it's always, and it's something that is, the moment we decide to do it, it becomes very easy. However, it needs also that state of ihsan, which is a choice that anyone can make. And so the prophets, because they most of the time made that choice, and they're not making those choices because they're prophets, it's the other way around. So it's all about surrendering. It's the key, the whole point. Surrendering, usually we think, okay, I will surrender when the conditions change, when things are the way I like it. That's not surrender. That means I'm still the Rabb. I will decide what should be around me, what is right, what is wrong, as if like, how much do I know? I don't even know what will happen in 10 minutes. I don't know if I will be living or not. I don't know what's behind the walls of my room. How can, like, in our ghafla, in our mindlessness, we can imagine things that are as if I know, and this is how it should be. And so that we need to build the muscle of means a muscle that we make the resistance weaker. Well, I can stand me that doesn't want to surrender. And that's where the ayat, as Isra talked about, the beauty and the purpose and the meaning of even our sadness and our compassion, because that sadness comes from our being very compassionate and caring, for instance, for my child. And so when I am aware that those are not my sadness, it is not my sadness. It's because when I start perceiving myself and my child separate from our Rabb. When the Rabb is not in the picture, then everything is frightening. Then we don't have we're like alone here in the world. I am alone, and these children, when I leave them, they will be alone. But when I reconnect with my Rabb, all is well. He's taking care of me, and as Isra had mentioned, he's the one taking care of my child as he's growing. He's the one who's taking care of his breathing and mind all together. He's the one who's feeding us, taking care of us. And through that relationship he gave us of caring for each other, he also is telling me how he's the one who cares for all of us. And then I may stop, inshallah, and start questioning my standards. I have standards of what a child should be, what a child should be doing. And I may stop comparing my child with others and just accept my child as she is. That only will happen after I run. That's why the run is so important, because then I will start seeing that aspect of my child. That child is unique. That child is created with beauty, with a purpose, with something. That child has something unique for the world, at least for the parents. And it may be that your child may be your buraq. You know, the buraq is the one that takes you into Mi'raj. However, all this is going to happen when I choose to surrender. That choice is, before I will make the choice, it may feel very overwhelming, and how can I make that surrender? But there is no, we don't need any reason to surrender. We don't need things to be going on well in order to surrender. Let's surrender and see what happens then. Let's surrender and then see how things will feel. Because you can't know what will happen. If someone is very thirsty, doesn't want to open his mouth and say, I feel awful, doesn't even know he's thirsty, and we think, just open your mouth and have this little bit of water and taste it and then tell us. Or an example that I like about myself, something that I learned through also very painful situation in my life. And now I realize that, yes, there was a created part, but the perception that made it much, much, much worse was my own perception. And when I was doing that, I'm saying, I want to surrender. I'm surrendering. Where is this? But now I realize I was not surrendering. I was thinking that something will happen and I will surrender. It's like someone saying, I keep my eyes closed and I say, when light comes, I will open my eyes. And then I told myself, yeah, you can. Let's open your eyes, you won't see the light. And in the beginning, because they've been closed for years and years and years, you may open your eyes and still can't see things around you and say, where is the light? Because light is there, but I can still adapt to it. So it may take a little while. But believe me, surrender and be patient. And Allah will show you things that you never thought were there. You will start seeing like miraculous things will start happening, just like Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he was put in fire. Fire became cool. People have du'as, prayers that, oh Allah, make our fire cool, because we all have our fire-like situations, and often people don't put us there. We put ourselves there. But anyways, whoever put us there, when we are in fire, there is a way for that fire to cool down when we relate back to, connect back to our Rabb. And here, when he is surrendering to do something which is like, oh my God, it's horrible. And suddenly, as if he realizes that it was not about actually physically killing his son, but about something else, about killing, let's say, or destroying the idol, not idolizing, but killing the possibility of idolizing his son, because he loved him so much. So it's a lesson of learning to love his son in the name of God. And our son doesn't have to be the gentlest and the best or whatever we have in our idea, in our mind. Whoever our child is, we can learn to love them Bismillah. And then when we love them Bismillah, they become, in their gentleness or in their rebellion, they become means for us to get closer to God, means burak, means to healing, means to learn, and something maybe like Yusuf alayhi salam, not only something that will benefit him, when he grew and developed his wisdom, benefited all the people of the region, because they were all going to die of hunger once. He was one who was the conduit of that revelation. No one else had the hikmah to receive how to take care of the people and their feeding. Subhanallah. So if you become, especially for Huda, I always have this feeling that she's been chosen. And you know, the prophets, they all have, even the Prophet ﷺ, we're told that it took him about 2 years to surrender to the fact that he accepted his being a prophet, because it's not easy. When you are a prophet, you have a responsibility. Whatever you say and do is going to be like scrutinized by the whole everyone else. So you are not only taking up the responsibility of your life, but being an example to others as well. So it's not
so even if God is talking to you directly, still it doesn't mean it's easy to surrender.
Through the ayat, when we surrender, we will start. In the beginning, it will feel like you know, when you hear some music or something that's from very far, it's very not clear. You don't know what's going on. In the beginning, when we start surrendering, it doesn't last long. But the more we get back to it, we start enjoying it, appreciating it, and those messages start getting clearer and clearer and clearer. The time, that lapse of time, starts getting shorter and shorter and shorter. But the key here is the surrender, and to remember to go back to that state of surrender. We need to remember that everything is an ayah. Even my pain is an ayah. Even why do I have this pain? Yes, because of my misperception. But if I had no compassion and no love, and I didn't care about my child, it wouldn't pain me. It means the more I have compassion for this child, the more I have pain. Who put this compassion? Who is taking care of him right now? Who is taking care of his breathing? Who is taking care of my breathing? So then you say, oh, alhamdulillah, it becomes easier to trust when we know our Rabb's compassion, and we know him as the general, as the Rabb, as the one who's taking care of us. And we start seeing how he is actually taking care of us in small things, in small ways. And then we start seeing that those small ways actually big gifts.
So it's a journey, and it's not like one unchanging state that everybody is ideally in. Even the prophets go through journeys, and this is a process of forgetting, remembering better, forgetting and getting to another state. So it's a continuous journey, and it's so interesting how right before this passage, the passage right before this is about Abraham alayhi salam breaking the idols in the temple, and so it's very important to see that how he confronts the idol externally, but then he still has to confront the possibility of idol in his heart. That now he needs to confront that, do I love this child in its name? Do I think that this beauty in this child, this lovability, this whatever I appreciate this child from is from it, or it's from me, my child, or am I loving this child in God's name? And that test, so-called test, is an opportunity to growth, because it squeezes him. Maybe that's not the best word, but it's pushes him to think, to feel that who do you love really here? Is this your child in its own name, or you're loving your God through your child? You're loving this child in God's name, and that is actually a very heavy test. I think that's why only Abraham had this kind of challenge: kill your child. But it is at the same time, as it was said, it's what we all go through. Maybe it's not directly this particular situation, but we all go through this challenge. And coming back to Eid al-Adha, this Eid of sacrifice, and how again, it's a moment. If we were constantly surrendering, we wouldn't need these highlighted moments. Here are these 10 days, and here are these 4 days of Eid. Here is your pilgrimage season. We wouldn't need these seasons. So the fact that there are these seasons put out there for us are again opportunities for us to come back and renew our intention to surrender. And
something.
Yes.
Okay. Moreover, if we look at this whole instance, we see that until this time there was a human sacrifice from the time of Adam alayhi salam. We see, the Abel and Cain story, and then all of these human sacrifices were there until this moment. And only in this time period of the sending of the prophets that we see this particular prophet was strong enough to do this, to take his son, someone he loved, to go and do that. At this point, the abolition of human sacrifice happened. So today we don't have to take our child and go and sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
So that sacrifice of human people was abolished at this time. And the other part was given, that we have to give our very best, our true self, because Allah created us to worship Him.
Mm.
So in this way, we have to present our very best to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Yeah, and I mean, about the human sacrifice part, to the best of my knowledge, it's nowhere in the Quran there's a story that says a human being is actually sacrificed for God, but there are reports that or some references in other texts, not in the Quran, that say that there was human sacrifice in some traditions before, especially in the idolatry situations. But anyhow, what is very helpful here, Sister Amra, is that this point of this ransom. So here is Abraham alayhi salam is stopped from killing his child, and he is provided with a ransom, with this momentous sacrifice that he then goes ahead and sacrifices. And in this reenactment of sacrifice, in this season, people doing that in Mecca and Hajj season right now, will be doing soon. And then many people around the world, many believers, are engaging in this act of sacrificing an animal as a reenactment, as an act of surrender. Now, there's an author, a Muslim author, who talks about Hajj and symbols, profound meanings behind that. And he has a moment where he talks about this moment of sacrifice in Hajj, and he says, you know your Ishmael, you should have brought it to Hajj with you, to be willing to slaughter that. And again, it's not the real Ishmael that needs to go, it's the idolized Ishmael, that loving Ishmael in its own sake, as if it's independently out there by itself, as if my connection to him is just like that, it's mine. No, this child is not my creation, it's a gift, and my feelings for this child is also a gift. This enjoyment of loving this being is a gift, and so that's the real challenge for him, and that's the thing that needs to be slaughtered, that forgetfulness, or that for the prophet, that potential to forget. And well, there's one thing about this our reenactment of this every season, is that we know the end of the story. Now we know that Ishmael doesn't get to be slaughtered at the end. We know, right? So it nuances and complicates our reenactments, because it nuances in the sense that it's not about Ishmael being killed. Like, it's not about Ishmael. It's about getting rid of the idolatry that could be related to Ishmael. At the same time, it complicates it, because you go there, you're going to slaughter the animal, and you know that this animal is not what you actually idolize in your life, unless you have animal, pet, sheep, or whatever. But in general, for us, we have other types of idols, visible or invisible, things. So so we can't be cheating here. We can say, well, we're just going to sacrifice an animal and eat it. It's fine. So, and that's why as we're going through that act, we should, inshallah, intend that it isn't just killing an animal, slaughtering and eating an animal. No, we are slaughtering this animal in God's name, as representing our willingness to surrender and to let go of our idolization.
Isra,
yes.
Something confirm what you just said, that it is not only about the physical slaughtering of an animal, but about killing our illusion that whatever our baby is, could be anything.
Yeah, baby or idol, yeah, whatever it is. Yeah.
Is not the beneficial, inherently good and beneficial and lovable in itself. It is a gift from our, because in the Hajj there are different types of making Hajj. In one of them, when you make that intention and you stay in Ihram for longer time, actually, you don't actually slaughter any animal. You know that. There are different kinds of, you can intend to have a Hajj that actually the Ihram lasts shorter and you do slaughter the animal or not. So it's not about the sacrifice itself.
Yes, and then there's also the Quranic passage that says it's not the blood that reaches God, but what's in your heart, or taqwa in your heart that reaches God. So it is really about intending to surrender. And who are we surrendering to? We are surrendering our sustainer, who is the source of all mercy and all power, all wisdom. There is no other source of wisdom. There is no other source of power other than this being. So we're not surrendering to anybody. We're surrendering to the one to be surrendered. And we're not surrendering blindly. We're surrendering on the basis of this incredible evidences we see. Now, it's past 10 o'clock, so I want to wrap up, even though this has been, this didn't feel long at all. It felt really very enriching for me. So reluctantly, we were getting to close. And in closing, I wanted to invite us to look at one.
Before you go,
we're not going yet. We're just going to the last point.
Your question is, when you slaughter that animal, you eat the animal, right? The animal becomes you. Can you put some light on that? Because it's what you eat, right? So you are eating that slaughtered animal.
Mm-hmm.
So you become, that animal becomes you. You become. I mean, can you throw some light on that?
Okay, what I will do is I I think the passage that I'm going to read here from the Quran, it might put some light on that as well, because it's going to talk about sacrifice, animal, and then bringing it both spiritual and the actual act of sacrificing. So I invite us to look at passage Quran 22, Surah 22, Surah Hajj, verse ayah 35. Surah 22, ayah 35, and I'm going to read it in translation. There are some brackets in my translation, so not every single word is in the actual original, but it is one of those translations that's really really helpful and not obscuring the text as far as I can see. So the translation goes as follows. And thus it is unto every community that has ever believed in us, have we appointed sacrifice as an act of worship, so that they might extol the name of God over whatever heads of cattle he may have provided for them. And bear in mind, your God is the one and only God. Hence, surrender yourselves unto him. And give you the glad tidings unto all who are humble, all whose hearts tremble with awe whenever God is mentioned, and all who patiently bear whatever ill befalls them, and all who are constant in prayer and spend on others out of what we provide for them as sustenance. And I will read the original as well. استعوذ بالله ولكل أمة جعلنا منسكا ليذكروا اسم الله على ما رزقهم من بهيمة الأنعام فإلهكم إله واحد فله أسلموا وبشر المخبتين الذين إذا ذكر الله وجلت قلوبهم والصابرين على ما أصابهم والمقيمي الصلاة ومما رزقناهم ينفقون صدق الله العظيم. And to me, this is another moment of incredible beauty in the Quran. Within, couple lines, we have all the important key concepts linked together with this amazing beauty. So it's talking about sacrifice as an act of worship, and the key thing is extolling God's name over what we are slaughtering, and always keeping in mind that your God is the only one God. If there's only one source of power, there's only one source of beauty, what is the next step? Surrender yourselves to him. And among the implications of the surrender is to really have an awareness of God to the extent to tremble whenever his name is mentioned. It's like when you are in love, whenever the person you're in love with is mentioned, your heart you have this butterfly, your heart is trembling. What does it mean? May Allah make us get a taste of that what does it mean to have awareness of God and his signs to such extent that whenever God is mentioned, my heart is trembling. Inshallah, we can get there. It's possible. If it's mentioned, it's not about perfection. If it is mentioned, it's I have the potential, you have the potential. And then all who patiently bear whatever ill befalls them, the verse says. So that patience in situations where we find ourselves in pain, we find ourselves in a very challenged circumstance, and there's a patience that comes with that surrender. It's not a grudging wait. That's not that kind of patience that the verse is talking about. It's more that peaceful wait, peaceful, because this is coming, this is horrible. It appears to be horrible to me. My own child will be slaughtered with my own hands. Like, this sounds horrible, but it's coming from the source of all mercy. It can't be against me. There's something for my growth here. And that connection, inshallah, we can end on that. So,
point, because we didn't mention this point at all. The most beautiful thing about the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam is, because of the Quran, Allah, that we are very close to him and we love him. And we are still doing those rituals that his family did, and the Zamzam is still flowing after 4,014 years. And I think in one of the verses of the Quran says that Ibrahim alayhi salam prayed for people in Makkah, that, for the muhsinin. And I think because of his prayers are Muslim, now. I think it's 4,000 years ago he prayed for us, that, give sustenance to this place of Khidr, and for those who will believe, and not for the whole humanity, but minimum some of it. So I think it's such a beautiful story. We love it.
And how could he have even imagined that this is the surrender that he's doing, 5,000 years ago, and his name is still mentioned with peace among so many people? So that's a gift from somebody unthinkable. He has treasures that we can't even imagine. This is my Lord, and this is my sustainer. This is whom whom we are, inshallah, surrendering. So, inshallah, I mean, I don't know if Sister Yamina or Sister Ali, if you wanted to say anything in closing.
Just one point. A beautiful ayat at the end says فإلهكم إله واحد فله أسلموا وبشر المخبتين. So it says your God is only one, the only God. Therefore, surrender yourselves to Him only. And right after it, وَبَشِّرِ الْمُخْبِتِينَ, and give the good news, the bushra, to those who actually practice the surrender. Subhanallah, can you see that right after, if you do surrender and trust and wait, you will get, inshallah, you will taste the good news, inshallah.
MashaAllah, it's so, this is the beauty, again, once again, the beauty of the Quran. It's so succinct, but every single word, every single sub-sentence is leading into the other. It's very interconnected. It's not like disconnected ideas. It's like your God is only one and only God. So what am I fighting? You know, like why should I even fight? He's the source of all beauty. He's the source of all justice. How can I compete my justice with his? Even my sense of justice is coming from him. There's only one God. I'm not God. Nobody else is God, meaning nobody else is the source. So surrender yourself unto him. Yeah, just be reasonable, be honest. Surrender, and with that comes the good news, that happiness, that peace, inshallah. That's beautiful. Thank you, Sister Yamina. Sister Aliaa, do you have any closing words?
Oh, I have a closing dua.
You have a closing dua. Okay, so inshallah, then we pause here and we will continue the theme of Abraham, inshallah, next month. So please, if there's anything that you wanted to share, but you couldn't because of the limitations of time, please take a note, make a note, and we will come back to Prophet Abraham again, inshallah. And
one thing for the dua is we do find ourselves outside that surrender. We will find ourselves even maybe in a state of anger, and it's okay. Do not despair. Just make istighfar and go back and inshallah decide to surrender. And please pray for each other. When you make istighfar for all of us, inshallah. So because sometimes we are weak. So may Allah help us. May that weakness be also a means to urge us back to surrender, that we have no other recourse than surrender, inshallah. So let's surrender willingly rather than unwillingly, inshallah, and reap the beauty of the good news.
I will make the dua from the verses that you have shared with us, Isra.
Please, yeah.
So the dua, like, will start like فَأَرَادُوا بِي كَيْدًا فَجَعَلْنَاهُمُ الْأَسْفَلِينَ. Ya Allah, Ya Allah, we ask you that whoever has planned any kaid, any plotting against this Muslim ummah, against your people, Ya Allah, make them asfalin, just like you made them before. And then next one, إِنِّي ذَهِبْ إِلَىٰ وَقَالَ إِنِّي ذَهِبْ إِلَىٰ رَبِّ سَيَهْدِينِ. Ya Allah, please guide us to your way, guide us. Hidayah, give us this hidayah, make us come your way, make it easy for us to come your way, and keep us on that way, make us steadfast on that way, thabbitna on that way. Rabb habli min as-salihin. Ya Allah, I ask you that you give all of us from as-salihin, whether they are children, whether they are husbands and wives, whether they are family and friends, whether they're neighbors, whether they're communities. Ya Allah, give us all these people that are salihin to be around us. كَبَّشَرْنَاهُ بِغُلَامٍ حَلِيمٍ. Ya Allah, make all our kids like Ghulam Halim. Make all of them put this hilm in their heart, put this kindness in their heart. Not only our kids, the kids of our loved one, the kids of our families, the kids of our friends, the kids of our ummah. Make them all with loving hearts, Ya Allah. Make them all with hilm. فلما بلغ معه السعي قال يا بني إني أرى في المنام إني أذبحك انظر ماذا ترى قال يا أبتي افعل ما تؤمر ستجدني إن شاء الله من الصابرين. Ya Allah, whenever you give us a challenge, Ya Allah, give us the wisdom to see through this challenge. Ya Allah, whenever you give us a challenge, make us from as-sabirin, make us from those who have patience and understand that it's a challenge that is given to us to come closer to you. Make us see the challenge as a way of coming closer to you. Make us start the challenge with Bismillah. Ya Allah, help us through this challenge. Make us see the challenge as a venue to know you better, because there's no way that we can know you by reading and by learning. The only way that we can know you is by experiencing. Ya Allah, whenever we have a challenge, remind us that this is what we're experiencing to bring us closer to you. فلما أسلم وتله للجبين وناديناه أن يا إبراهيم قد صدقت الرؤيا إنك كذلك نجزي المحسنين. Ya Allah, provide us with brothers and sisters and kids and families that will help us surrender to our Lord. Provide us with partners that help us surrender to our Lord. Provide us with kids that help us to surrender to our Lord. Make ourselves and those around us, Ya Allah, make us an ummah that encourages each other to surrender to our Lord. And make us, Ya Allah, help each other become from those muhsinin, so that we can reap the jaza, the thawab, the reward of being a muhsinin as an ummah. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Inna hadha lahu al-bala' al-mubin. Ya Allah, when you give us a challenge that's a difficult challenge, Ya Allah, give us the means to go through it, and give us the understanding that it will only bring us closer to you. It's not so that you test, how good we are. It's just a mean to get us closer to you, closer to knowing you, because this whole life and this beautiful book that you've sent us is just to get us to know you. وفديناه بذبح عظيم وتركنا عليه في الآخرين سلام على إبراهيم كذلك نجزي المحسنين. Ya Allah, make us from the people of Prophet Ibrahim, from the followers of Prophet Muhammad. Accept us with them, Ya Allah. They were our teachers, they were our leaders. Ya Allah, accept us as their students. Make us good students of them. Make our path be their path. Make our dhikr high as their dhikr, Ya Arhamar Rahimeen. Connect us with them, Ya Arhamar Rahimeen. Make us muhsinin, and make us from ibadak al-mu'mineen. Ameen. Wa sallallahu Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I just found it like
Thank you
so
very
many
much.
good advice in what you shared.
Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum everyone. And join us next week for our Quran study, as usual Thursday nights at this time, 8:30. And next month again in November, we'll be, inshallah, together in our monthly lectures. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam. Thank you so much.